This is a how-to video on how to remove the trim from the rear quarter of the Subaru Outback station wagon. This should apply to years 2005 through 2009. It's fairly involved in getting this big piece off here because it's interlocked with so many other things. Now, why would you want to remove this piece? Well, because a lot of wiring harness is hidden underneath it, particularly in this area. And if you need to service that wiring harness, you will need to remove this piece. This piece is locked in place by several overlapping other pieces. To begin with, this piece here, which is known as the quarter rear pillar trim. This lingo is coming from the Subaru manual. And then it's also locked in place by this, which is the quarter front pillar trim, this piece here. Now that piece in turn is locked in by this piece, which is called the backrest shoulder. Now the backrest shoulder in turn is held at the bottom by a 12mm bolt, which is hidden by the rear seat cushion. So you would have to remove the rear seat cushion and then that 12mm bolt. Then this piece, which can be popped out, there's a clip here holding it in place. And then once this is popped out, you can then remove this piece. Now the quarter front pillar trim also has a 10mm bolt beneath this little lid right here. You have to pry that off, and it will expose that 10mm bolt right there. And then you can then pry this piece off. In addition, this large lower quarter trim is held in place by a portion of the floor. Okay. What the Subaru manual calls the luggage floor. This piece here, and also to some extent by this piece here, which is called the luggage floor end cover. This part is held in by several clips. Once you remove this, and this, you can then pull this piece out. This piece is called the lower quarter trim in the Subaru manual, and it in turn is held on by screws. One of them is currently hidden under here. Then there's this screw, and there's a screw here underneath that little piece of plastic, which can easily be pried off. And then there's two bolts here and here, which are hidden by these plastic covers. When all of those are removed, you can then pull the part off. There are several plastic clips holding it in place. And then this piece will then pull back, and you then expose this wiring here. We will demonstrate the trim removal process. Now, when working with trim pieces, it's good to have a trim removal tool. This can save you a lot of time and prevent some damage. We will begin at the quarter rear pillar trim, and I'm going to just sort of pry this off. On the back side, you can see that there are 3 clips that held it in place. Here, here, and here. There's also some fiberglass. Be careful working with fiberglass. You might want to wear gloves just to keep those fiberglass splinters from getting into your skin. And you can see we have now exposed a significant part of our wiring harness. This is a view from the back seat with the backrest up. Now here is the backrest shoulder. And in order to remove this piece, we have to remove the rear seat cushion. I'm looking at the front of the rear passenger seat, looking at the floor, and you've got this little hook right here. This little loop here that is poking into the floor right here. There's a little hook in there. This is on the passenger side. There's another one on the driver's side. You basically just have to give the seat cushion a real good yank to pull that out, and then you can remove the seat. Okay, we've gone ahead and done that on the passenger side. Now I've gone ahead and done the same thing on the driver's side, and now our seat cushion is loose. And I'm going to go over to the driver's side and pull the seat cushion out. Now the seat belts are going to sort of hook things. You have to sort of push these back and out of the way in order to get this seat cushion out. Otherwise these are going to grab on you. Now the seat should be loose and we can go ahead and remove it. Now we are looking at the floor here with the seat cushion removed. And here is a 12mm bolt. And that is holding on the backrest shoulder. That bolt has to be removed. And we use our 12mm socket to get that out of there. Now this bolt has been removed. And this piece is now loose. Now what I've found is in order to get this thing out, you kind of have to pop it out. You have to put that trim removal tool under here and just kind of give it a sort of pop the whole thing up. That clip is sort of here on the back side right there. You have to get this tool underneath this back part and then give it a little pop. There you go. And that frees up this piece. Get that out of the way. With the backrest shoulder piece out of the way, we have now exposed the quarter front pillar trim and unlocked it. Now underneath here, this thing that says SRS airbag, there is a 10mm bolt that has to come loose. We can just simply pry that out pretty easily with a small screwdriver. We have popped off that lid, exposing that 10mm bolt. We can now get our 10mm socket on there and just go ahead and remove it. Okay, that bolt has now been removed. Now we have a couple clips here that are exposed, one here and one here. And we will go ahead and remove these, starting with this one up here. You might want to start it with a flathead screwdriver just to kind of get a little room under there to get the clip removal tool started. And then I put my finger over it just so it doesn't go flying off. Okay, and there it is. That clip has now been removed. I got this one down here. Okay, got that one loose. Now the rest of it, just sort of pull it off. With the 10mm bolt removed and the two clips loosened, we can now just pull the front quarter pillar trim off. There's really just one clip left holding it in place. Here's that other clip we popped off earlier. Again, lots of fiberglass. Wear gloves. Now the front part of the lower quarter trim has been unlocked by removing the quarter front pillar trim and the backrest shoulder. And the upper part has been unlocked by removing the quarter rear pillar trim. Now we still have to unlock the lower part by removing this part of the luggage floor and by removing the luggage floor end cover. This part of the luggage floor is very easily removed. Just sort of pry it up with anything and it pops right off. The luggage floor end cover is held on by multiple clips. Because there's a bit of overlap with this section of the floor, I went ahead and pried it up just to keep it out of the way. And now we can use our trim tool and start popping those clips off. And that's it. Just turn that over and you can see we've got a total of 6 clips underneath that piece. Now the lower part of the lower quarter trim is now unlocked. The lower quarter trim piece is still held on by bolts here and screws here, here, and here underneath that plastic piece. Now these bolts are covered by these little plastic covers. Those just pop right off. Go ahead and remove those covers. These bolts are 10 millimeters. They also have a Phillips head receptacle on the top, so you may be able to just get them out with your Phillips head screwdriver. I've gone ahead and removed those 2 bolts. Now we shall remove these screws. Okay, we've gone ahead and removed that screw, and now this front piece, this one is covered, this front screw is covered by this little plastic lid. Remove that, and you expose that 3rd screw. Again, it's just a simple Phillips head screw, and out it comes. Now, in some models, there will be a woofer speaker behind this panel, in which case you'll have to do some additional work to remove that. Now, my particular base model does not have that speaker. It has this little compartment which really doesn't contain anything. We can just leave that in place. Now, with all the screws and bolts removed and everything locking it in place has been removed, we can now go ahead and start pulling this, just pulling it off and breaking those clips loose. Okay, with a little yanking and tugging, and there it is. The lower quarter trim has been pulled back, exposing everything underneath. Exposing all of that wiring harness, and exposing, seat belt mechanism, all kinds of things. Now, as you can see, behind that lower quarter trim, there's a lot of fiberglass. Again, use gloves or else you're going to get little fiberglass splinters in your skin and it's going to be unpleasant. With the quarter lower trim removed, we can now expose all of this wiring harness. If you are working on the liftgate wiring harness, or what they call the liftgate cord, this is the part you're most interested in right here. These two connectors connect the liftgate to the rest of the car. So if you are going to be removing and replacing the wiring harness to the liftgate, you have to disconnect these two right here and then feed it up and out this way. Incidentally, here we have the cable to the passenger side tail light. And this yellow cable here, this one involves the airbags. When you have completed whatever task that you were doing, which required the removal of this trim, reinstalling it is simply the reverse of taking it off. And we will go through that to demonstrate it. We begin by pushing the lower quarter trim back into position. We have to lock all this stuff here, get everything unlipped, which is lipped over somewhere, and then push everything into position. Lining up these various clips and pushing them into position. Okay, we've now pushed all of these clips back into position. We'll now put on the luggage floor end cover and this section of floor that we had removed earlier. Watch out for that little lip right there. That might, you have to lift this piece up just a little bit to get this underneath. And now we just push it on to connect those four clips. And this piece just falls right into place. Now on the lower quarter trim piece, we will go ahead and put those 10mm bolts back in and the covers on top of them. Okay, we have completed that. And by the way, these little plastic covers break really easily. It's kind of hard to avoid breaking them. Next, we will put these screws back in here, here, and here, and put that little plastic cover over that screw. Okay, that has been done, and now the lower quarter trim is now in place. Next, we shall reinstall the quarter front pillar trim, lining up the clips. And then we need to replace this clip we pulled out earlier right here. And we need to replace the 10mm bolt that we pulled out from here. And then we need to replace the cover. Okay, now everything's reattached on the quarter front pillar trim. Next we will reinstall the backrest shoulder. Now this piece has been maneuvered back into place, and we just have to kind of pop it down and catch that clip back there. Now we have to raise the seat and reconnect that 12-millimeter bolt to the lower end. We're going to put that 12-millimeter bolt back in. Okay. Now we will put back in the rear seat again. One of the things you're trying to do is connect this little hook here to this metal loop here on the seat. I've repositioned the rear seat. And you got to pull all these seat belts through too. Otherwise they're going to get trapped underneath. And you have to kind of shove this thing down and back in order to make that little hook clip in. Now here we are looking at the floor in the front of the seat cushion. We have to get this loop inside of that hole. Okay, looks like we got it in, and it's push it down. Now the rear seat has now been reattached. Now we reattach the quarter rear pillar trim. And that completes removal and reinstallation of the rear quarter trim. If you need to remove the quarter trim from the driver's side, it's really just the same thing. Okay, you just do what we just did, except the mirror image.